The Indus Valley Civilization flourished more than 4,000 years ago, along the life-giving waters of the Indus River and its tributaries. Stretching across what is now modern-day Pakistan and northwestern India, its cities were remarkably advanced with wide roads, intricate drainage systems, and standardized brickwork. Its people were artisans, merchants, farmers, and city builders, living in well-planned urban centers like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. They crafted delicate beads, traded across long distances, and designed homes with private bathing areas. Yet, they left behind no known kings, no monumental tombs, no warlike conquests, just an elegant, enduring quiet. As we explore this world tonight, we do so not only to learn about what was built and what was lost, but to gently fall into the rhythm of their lives. What did it feel like to walk their city streets? To hear the waters of the Indus flowing nearby? To press a seal into soft clay, its animal motifs reflecting spiritual or commercial significance? These are not just archaeological questions. They are moments we can visit in the mind. This script will guide you through that journey, softly and steadily, as we drift through centuries of peace, prosperity, mystery, and change. You'll hear of the civilization's origins in Neolithic villages, its rise into an urban network of over 1,000 settlements, its distinctive crafts and architecture, and the ongoing puzzles that continue to intrigue archaeologists. We'll end, as gently as we begin, in the twilight of this civilization, where changing rivers, environmental stress, and shifting trade patterns may have slowly dimmed its light. Throughout this story, we'll move calmly through the chapters of time, pausing to breathe, reflect, and imagine. Each chapter offers a soft step through history, designed for your relaxation and rest. Along the way, key terms will be explained, historical context will be clarified, and rich imagery will guide your imagination without ever overwhelming the mind. You may drift in and out of sleep as the tale continues. That's perfectly welcome. The past will still be here when you return to it. And even if your conscious mind drifts, your dreaming mind may carry the rhythm of these ancient waters. So let us begin. Allow your breath to slow, feel the weight of your body settle, and imagine, far across time, a vast plain of fertile land dotted with small villages, slowly becoming cities, cities becoming a civilization, and that civilization whispering across time with brick and bead, with silence and story. This is the world of the Indus Valley Civilization, a forgotten world of rivers, cities, and silent scripts. Long before cities rose along the Indus River, long before the bricks were baked and the seals were carved, there were people, slowly learning to live with the rhythm of the land, the seasons, and the river's quiet song. The story begins in the Neolithic, around 7,000 BCE, in a place now called Mehrgarh, located near the Bolan Pass in present-day Pakistan. This early farming village, nestled between hills and desert, gives us the first hints of a new way of life emerging, one not just of hunting and gathering, but of settling, planting, and crafting. Here, early people cultivated barley and wheat, domesticated animals such as sheep and goats, and made pottery by hand, often decorated with simple motifs. Mehrgarh is important because it marks the slow beginning of a transition from small, scattered communities toward something more complex. Over thousands of years, these early farmers developed tools and techniques that would eventually give rise to an urban world. They built mud brick homes, buried their dead with care and grave goods, and engaged in early forms of long-distance trade, importing materials like lapis lazuli, turquoise, and seashells from faraway lands. By around 4000 BCE, this Neolithic foundation was expanding. Villages grew along the floodplains of the Indus River and its tributaries, most notably the Ravi, Sutlej, and Ghaggar Hakra. These rivers were seasonal and often unpredictable, but they brought fertility and opportunity. Farming intensified, and with it came the need for new forms of cooperation, the beginnings of organized society. Around this time, we also see increasing signs of social complexity. Pottery becomes more standardized and sophisticated. Some houses begin to show signs of planning. Trade networks extend further with materials and ideas flowing between these proto-Harappan communities and neighboring cultures in Central Asia and the Iranian Plateau. By 3200 BCE, we enter what archaeologists call the early Harappan period. This is not yet the full bloom of the Indus Valley Civilization, but its roots are deepening. Villages grow into towns, and some towns begin to show signs of urban planning. Roads laid out with care, houses grouped in blocks, and signs of surplus production. Early forms of writing appear: mysterious symbols carved into pottery or impressed on seals, the ancestors of the script that will later puzzle generations. These early towns are scattered across a vast area, stretching from Baluchistan in the west to the edge of the Ganges Basin in the east. Yet even in this early phase, there is a kind of shared culture, common pottery styles, shared architectural methods, and similar burial practices. It suggests that even before the great cities emerged, there was already a sense of unity, a cultural memory being formed across generations. And then, quite suddenly in the archaeological record, we see something remarkable: the rise of true cities. By around 2600 BCE, the mature Harappan period begins. Towns swell into cities. Thousands of people now live in carefully planned urban centers. Roads are laid out in grid patterns. Brick houses rise, many with private wells and bathrooms. Granaries are built to store surplus grain. Drainage systems carry wastewater away. And in the heart of these cities, public structures begin to appear: large buildings with unclear purposes, perhaps for ritual, trade, or administration. What makes this so remarkable is the consistency across the civilization. From Mohenjo-Daro in the south to Harappa in the north, and from Lothal in Gujarat to Kalibangan in the desert west, these cities share planning principles, architectural details, weights and measures, and even artistic styles. Bricks are uniformly sized, often with a ratio of 1 to 2 to 4, a standardization far ahead of its time. This coherence suggests strong cultural cohesion, perhaps through shared beliefs, trade practices, or political agreements. But what we do not find is just as telling. There are no massive palaces, no extravagant temples, no elaborate tombs for kings. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, where monumental power dominates the landscape, the Indus Valley Civilization appears egalitarian, or at least without overt rulers. Its power is quiet, distributed, and possibly more civic than royal. Their script, however, remains elusive. Known as the Indus script, it consists of short sequences of symbols often found on seals, pottery, or copper tablets. Some show animals, others geometric shapes, and many remain undeciphered. Despite decades of effort, scholars have not agreed on what the symbols mean. They may represent language, or they may be mnemonic or symbolic. Without a Rosetta Stone, the true voice of this civilization remains silent. Even so, their material culture speaks volumes. Small figurines suggest religious or symbolic practices. A famous bronze dancer from Mohenjo-Daro reveals artistic skill and cultural identity. Seals with unicorn-like animals, bulls, and script tell us of trade, ownership, or ritual. By 2500 BCE, the Indus Valley Civilization is one of the largest and most sophisticated societies on Earth, yet it leaves behind no heroic tales, no battles, no dynasties carved in stone. It is a civilization of balance, precision, and quiet endurance. Its strength lies in cooperation, not conquest, in order, not in opulence. And it all began with farmers near rivers, slowly learning to work together, to shape clay, to bake bricks, and to build something extraordinary. As we drift further into their story, we leave behind the early years and enter the height of this ancient world, a time of urban harmony and sprawling complexity. Let your breath follow the soft current of the Indus, flowing steadily through the past. As we drift now into the streets of the Indus cities, The quiet grandeur of daily life begins to take shape, not in towering monuments or kings' tombs, but in the soft hum of routine. Markets opening at dawn, water drawn from private wells, children playing in shaded courtyards, the faint scent of fire-baked bread curling through the air. To walk through an Indus city like Mohenjo-Daro, Harappa, or Dholavira is to witness careful design urban planning that speaks not of chaos, but of consideration. Streets are laid out in a grid, intersecting at right angles. Houses are arranged in blocks, with clear boundaries between public spaces and private dwellings. Most buildings are constructed from uniform baked bricks, a standard size across cities hundreds of miles apart, offering both durability and aesthetic consistency. The homes themselves vary in size, but many share a few striking features. Inner courtyards open to the sky, flat roofs, staircases leading to upper floors, and private bathing areas. In fact, some of the earliest known indoor toilets and drainage systems are found here. Wastewater is directed from homes into covered street drains, suggesting a strong civic emphasis on cleanliness, sanitation, and community health. Imagine a morning in Mohenjo-Daro. The sun rises over the flat-roofed skyline. Merchants begin to arrange their goods beads, pottery, grains, and textiles in open courtyards. Children fetch water from a well, their clay pots tapping gently against each other. A woman carefully sweeps the stone threshold of her doorway, while a potter down the street readies his wheel. These are not the scenes of grandeur, but of quiet dignity, a city alive in its harmony. At the center of these cities, we often find large public structures. In Mohenjo-Daro, the most famous is the Great Bath, a rectangular pool built with watertight bricks, surrounded by colonnades and accessed by a flight of steps on either side. No other structure like it has been found in contemporary civilizations. While we do not know its precise purpose, many scholars believe it held ritual significance perhaps for purification or communal ceremonies. The precision of its construction, the baked bricks, the bitumen sealant, the careful symmetry reveals not only technical skill, but a cultural emphasis on order, rhythm, and perhaps even sacred water. Nearby, there are granaries, large buildings with multiple bays and platforms, likely used to store surplus grain. Their presence suggests a society capable of agricultural abundance and of organizing resources for collective benefit. Some cities also had citadels, elevated platforms, where administrative or ritual buildings may have stood, but again, there are no royal palaces, no carved statues of rulers, no inscriptions celebrating military victories. This lack of centralized royal imagery has led to one of the Indus civilization's great mysteries. Who ruled? If there were kings or governing elites, they left no obvious trace. Perhaps power was distributed among councils, elders, or guilds. Perhaps spiritual leaders or merchants guided decision-making. Or perhaps the Indus people simply had different notions of authority, emphasizing balance and cooperation over hierarchy. What we do see is evidence of intense economic activity. The Indus people were skilled artisans. They worked with precious materials, carnelian, lapis lazuli, shell, agate, and faience to create jewelry, beads, and seals. These items were not only decorative, but often symbolic. Seals, made of steatite and engraved with animals and script, were likely used to mark goods for trade or identification. Some seals depict what appears to be a unicorn, a single-horned animal not found in nature, suggesting a symbolic or perhaps mythological significance. Artisans also crafted small terracotta figurines of humans, animals, and deities, giving us glimpses of their symbolic world. Some female figurines may represent fertility goddesses, echoing beliefs found across early agrarian societies. Others depict bulls, elephants, and birds animals central to the Indus imagination. The cities were not isolated. They formed a network, connected by rivers and overland routes, and engaged in long-distance trade. Indus goods, especially beads and seals, have been found in Mesopotamia, where they were prized for their craftsmanship. The Mesopotamian texts mention a land called Meluha, believed by many scholars to refer to the Indus region. In turn, the Indus people imported materials not found locally, such as tin, silver, and precious stones, evidence of sophisticated exchange systems. The port city of Lothal, located in present-day Gujarat, even had a dockyard, one of the oldest known. Its design suggests an understanding of tidal patterns and engineering. Lothal also had a thriving bead-making industry, as well as warehouses for storing goods. These cities were not only places to live, they were hubs of innovation and commerce. Agriculture, of course, was the foundation of it all. The fertile floodplains allowed for the cultivation of wheat, barley, peas, and sesame. There is also evidence of cotton cultivation. In fact, the Indus people may have been among the first in the world to grow and weave cotton, a plant now central to global textile industries. Animals were domesticated, including cattle, water buffalo, and possibly elephants. Their presence in art and seals suggests not only practical use, but symbolic importance. The bull, in particular, features prominently and may have held cultural or spiritual weight. Religious life in the Indus Valley remains enigmatic. There are no grand temples, but small altars and fire pits suggest household rituals. Some figurines are seated in yogic postures, possibly early representations of meditation or proto-Hindu beliefs. A famous seal depicts a figure surrounded by animals, seated cross-legged with horned headgear, sometimes called the Pashupati seal. Some scholars connect it to Shiva, a major deity in later Hinduism, though such links are speculative. Without written texts we can fully read, much remains unknown. But the archaeological silence also invites reflection. Perhaps this was a civilization whose spirituality was lived rather than proclaimed, whose values were encoded in practice rather than in grand inscriptions. A world of quiet reverence more than ritual spectacle. Even the dead were treated with modesty. Burial practices were simple, extended supine burials in plain graves, often with a few personal items like pottery or beads. No pyramids, no gold-laden tombs. Death, like life, seems to have been marked with balance and restraint. And so, as we float gently through these streets of brick and dust, we feel the life that once filled them ordinary, peaceful, and deeply human. There is no need for empires or heroes to make a civilization meaningful. In the Indus Valley, it is the architecture of daily life, the poetry of water and clay, that tells the story. Let your breath settle again, and imagine the soft clatter of beads, the hush of sandals on sun-warmed bricks, the distant call of river birds. The city sleeps, and the past, ever patient, waits beneath its dust. As we drift further into the life of the Indus Valley, we enter a world not of kings or conquests, but of craftspeople, the quiet architects of prosperity. In every home, in every workshop, we see the patient rhythm of hands shaping earth, carving stone, stringing beads. The Indus economy was a subtle symphony, with each artisan, farmer, and trader contributing to its enduring harmony. We begin with the artisans, the true pulse of Indus cities. From the smallest hamlet to the largest urban center, the archaeological remains show an astonishing diversity of craft specialization. There were potters, bead makers, seal carvers, metalworkers, weavers, shell cutters, and more, each working with remarkable skill. The pottery of the Indus people is both functional and beautiful. Made on slow spinning wheels or by hand, these vessels display geometric patterns, zigzags, chevrons, and floral designs painted in black or red slip. Some vessels feature stylized animals or birds, while others are unadorned, used for cooking, storing, or carrying water. Pottery kilns have been found in many settlements, often grouped together in clusters, suggesting neighborhoods devoted to ceramic production. But it is perhaps in bead making that Indus craftsmanship reaches its finest expression. Beads were made from a wide range of materials: carnelian, agate, jasper, steatite, lapis lazuli, shell, copper, and faience, a glazed non-clay ceramic. Some were simple and round, others long and tubular, with etched or drilled designs. The precision is stunning. Some beads are so small and uniformly shaped that it is difficult to imagine how they were created without magnifying tools. At sites like Lothal and Mohenjo-Daro, archaeologists have found entire bead-making workshops, complete with drills, furnaces, polishing stones, and raw materials. The presence of discarded fragments and unfinished pieces allows us to reconstruct the process step by step from raw stone to polished gem. These beads were likely worn as jewelry, sewn into garments, or traded as valuables. Next, we find the seals square, often palm-sized tokens carved from steatite, a soft stone that hardens when fired. Each seal bears a unique combination of animal motifs and script. The most common animal is the unicorn, a fantastical creature shown in profile, always with a single curved horn. Other animals include bulls, elephants, rhinoceroses, crocodiles, and birds, each rendered with a delicate, almost meditative precision. The seals may have been used for identification, like signatures or trademarks, perhaps pressed into wet clay to mark goods or property. Others might have had symbolic or ritual purposes. Some include a ritual stand or an object resembling an altar. Because we cannot yet decipher the Indus script, their full meaning eludes us, but their presence in trade centers and their uniformity suggest they were deeply woven into economic and cultural life. Now let us step outside the cities, beyond the kilns and courtyards, to explore the web of trade that connected the Indus Valley to the world. The Indus people were not isolated. They were connected by river, desert, and sea to distant lands and cultures. Within their own domain, goods flowed along the Indus River and its tributaries carried by boat, cart, or caravan. Agricultural surpluses from the fertile floodplains moved north and west. Raw materials from distant hills made their way into cities for refinement. Among the most prized imports was lapis lazuli, a deep blue stone sourced from the Badakhshan region of present-day Afghanistan. It was brought hundreds of miles through rugged terrain, eventually reaching Indus workshops where it was cut, drilled, and polished. Other imports included copper from Rajasthan and Baluchistan, tin from Central Asia, and gold, possibly from southern India. From the coast, at sites like Sutkagendor and Balakot, we find evidence of maritime trade. The Indus people were likely skilled sailors, navigating the Arabian Sea in flat-bottomed boats. Their goods, beads, cotton textiles, ceramics, and seals made their way to distant ports in the Persian Gulf and Mesopotamia. In Mesopotamian texts, dating as early as 2350 BCE, we find references to a place called Meluha, described as a distant, wealthy land known for its exotic goods and seafaring merchants. Many scholars believe Meluha refers to the Indus Valley. Artifacts from Indus cities, especially seals and beads, have been found in Mesopotamian cities like Ur, Lagash, and Akkad, while Mesopotamian cylinder seals have been found in Indus sites as well. This suggests not only trade, but possibly diplomatic or cultural exchange. Perhaps Indus merchants lived in foreign ports. Perhaps they brought stories, languages, and customs with them, though, again, the lack of deciphered writing keeps their voices just out of reach. The dockyard at Lothal is one of the most compelling pieces of this maritime puzzle. Measuring over 200 meters in length, this rectangular structure was built from kiln-fired bricks and lined with a sluice gate to control water flow. Nearby were warehouses, workshops, and a bead-making center. Though some scholars debate whether this was a true dock, its engineering suggests deep knowledge of tides, currents, and construction, and a desire to connect inland cities with oceanic routes. And what of agriculture, the silent backbone of this civilization? farming sustained the Indus cities. Along the floodplains of the Indus, Ghaggar Hakra, and Sarasvati rivers, the soil was fertile and generous. The main crops were wheat, barley, millet, sesame, and peas. The Indus people also grew cotton, perhaps the world's earliest cotton cultivators, and may have pioneered the art of spinning and weaving cotton textiles. They used plows, likely drawn by oxen, and irrigation channels to manage seasonal water. Storage granaries, often found on raised platforms, helped manage surplus and prevent spoilage. These agricultural systems required planning, cooperation, and an understanding of seasonal rhythms, all signs of an organized, deeply rooted rural economy. Animals were integral too. Humped zebu cattle, water buffalo, sheep, goats, pigs, and chickens were domesticated and used for milk, meat, labor, and hides. In more arid regions, camels may have been used for long-distance transport. The Indus people also had a close relationship with elephants, as seen in their art and seals, though whether they were domesticated or simply symbolic is still debated. Interestingly, hunting and fishing continued alongside farming. Remains of deer, boar, fish, and fowl suggest a mixed diet and an ongoing connection to the natural world. So what kind of economy was this? It was neither capitalist nor feudal in the modern sense. There is no clear evidence of money or coinage, but barter, standardized weights, and seals suggest regulated exchange. A series of cubical weights made from chert and following binary systems have been found across sites, often stored in boxes alongside balance scales. These were likely used by merchants to measure grains, goods, and precious materials with fairness and consistency. The fact that such weights and measures are uniform across a vast region suggests central coordination or shared norms, a kind of quiet agreement, perhaps enforced not by kings but by tradition or consensus. And yet, the economy was not simply functional, it was aesthetic. Beauty was not an afterthought. From the curve of a carnelian bead to the polish of a black-slipped bowl, the Indus people infused their crafts with grace. This too was part of their legacy, the sense that even trade, even utility, could be elegant. As we gently float back from the workshops and markets, let us pause to imagine an evening in Lothal. The sun settles behind the palm trees. Traders return from the wharf. Beads are packed in linen pouches, weighed and sealed. A potter stacks his final wares inside the kiln. Nearby, a child threads a red bead onto a string, her small hands steady. A merchant scribes an unknown script onto a tiny seal, its impression the final signature of the day's labor. This was a world alive with movement, with exchange, with meaning, and though it lies buried now beneath layers of silence and earth, its rhythms continue to whisper across the centuries. Close your eyes, if you haven't already, and let the soft clang of copper, the hush of spinning wheels, the flicker of lamplight in a craftsman's home carry you further into peaceful rest. As twilight falls gently over the streets of Mohenjo-Daro, we turn inward away from the noise of markets and workshops and begin to wonder, what did the Indus people believe? What spirits or gods whispered through their temples or hovered silently above their rooftops? What stories did they pass from parent to child, and what rituals marked the turning of seasons? The Indus Valley Civilization has long stood as an enigma, in part because its people left behind no deciphered texts. They wrote, yes, thousands of short inscriptions, etched into seals, pottery, copper tools, and even ivory. But their script remains unread, its meaning locked away in curved symbols and silent marks. These inscriptions usually contain between 4 and 12 characters. They are written from right to left and display a remarkable consistency across vast distances from Harappa in the north to Dholavira in the south. Some scholars believe the Indus script may not have represented a spoken language at all, but rather functioned more like symbols conveying identity, trade information, or status. Others believe it was a true writing system, now lost to time. Without a Rosetta Stone, A bilingual text to compare it against decipherment remains elusive. Attempts have linked it to Dravidian, Proto-Elamite, Sumerian, or even Munda language families, but none have gained consensus. Still, we can read the symbols even if not the words. A great many Indus seals feature animals: bulls, elephants, tigers, water buffalo, and the mysterious unicorn. This unicorn, always shown in profile with a single curved horn, may have represented a mythic creature, a clan symbol, or a deity. We cannot be sure. Other seals depict ritual objects: a standard or altar, a ritual bowl, or a seated figure surrounded by wild animals. One such figure has captivated scholars for decades. Often called the Pashupati seal, it shows a horned figure seated cross-legged, a pose reminiscent of yogic meditation, surrounded by an elephant, a tiger, a rhinoceros, and a buffalo, with deer beneath the throne. Some interpret this figure as an early form of Shiva, a major deity in later Hinduism. The name Pashupati means Lord of the Animals, an epithet of Shiva even today. But here, we must tread gently. These comparisons with later religious traditions must be made with caution. Continuity is possible, but so is coincidence. The Indus people left no written hymns, no temples with carved deities, no clear pantheon etched into stone. Instead, their spiritual life must be glimpsed in fragments in architecture, in burial practices, and in small, symbolic objects. Let us begin with water, the most elemental symbol of renewal. Across Indus sites, we find evidence of ritual bathing. In Mohenjo-Daro, the Great Bath stands as one of the most striking architectural remains. It is a large, rectangular pool approximately 12 meters long and 2.4 meters deep, lined with brick, and once filled by a well and drain system. It may have been used for ceremonial purification, akin to later traditions in South Asia, where water symbolizes spiritual cleansing. The Great Bath is surrounded by small rooms, possibly changing chambers or spaces for private rituals. Its construction shows meticulous attention to water-tightness. Layers of bitumen, natural tar, seal the bricks, and covered drains protect against contamination. This focus on cleanliness, order, and water suggests that ritual purity held deep importance. And this is not confined to Mohenjo-Daro. Similar bathing platforms and wells are found throughout the civilization, indicating that the symbolic role of water was widespread, not isolated. Next, we turn to burials. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, the Indus people left no grand tombs, no pyramids, and no elaborate mortuary temples. Their burials are simple and varied. Some graves contain full human skeletons laid on their backs, oriented east to west. Others include pottery, beads, bangles, and food offerings. In some cases, we find multiple bodies buried together, possibly indicating family or communal burials. At sites like Harappa and Kalibangan, burial urns hold cremated remains, suggesting different funerary customs, perhaps depending on region, status, or belief. There is little evidence of wealth-based inequality in graves. Most burials are modest, with few grave goods. This may point to a society where spiritual equality was emphasized over social hierarchy, or at least where status was not expressed in death. The absence of monumental temples has led some scholars to propose that Indus religion was more domestic or communal than centralized. Rather than worshipping in towering ziggurats, perhaps the Indus people practiced household rituals, with small altars, offerings, and symbolic objects passed down through generations. Among these objects, we find terracotta figurines, some human, some animal, some hybrid. One of the most common human figurines is the so-called Mother Goddess, a female figure with wide hips, elaborate headdresses, and sometimes exposed breasts. These may have been symbols of fertility, abundance, or protection, but again, we must be cautious. Not all figurines are goddesses. Some may be dolls, toys, or votive offerings. Other figurines show animals: bulls, dogs, birds and monkeys often with expressive features and stylized bodies. Some even have movable limbs or wheels, suggesting use as toys for children. Yet others are more abstract, perhaps carried as amulets or worn as charms. In this blend of the sacred and everyday, we catch a glimpse of Indus spirituality not in towering gods or grand myths, but in gesture, symbol, and silence. The absence of temples does not mean the absence of belief. It may reflect a different kind of religiosity, one woven into daily life, into the rhythms of washing, planting, offering, and honoring the unseen. And then there are the fire altars. At Kalibangan and Lothal we find brick platforms with circular or rectangular pits, often surrounded by ashes and charred remains. These have been interpreted as fire altars, perhaps used in ritual sacrifice or ceremonial burning. In later Indian tradition, the sacred fire, Agni, plays a central role in rites of passage, marriage, and offerings to the gods. Whether the Indus people held similar beliefs is unknown, but the presence of fire-based rituals suggests a link to cosmic elements and transformation. One must also note the astronomical alignments in some settlements, particularly Dholavira. The city's layout, with its north-south orientation and specific ratios, hints at a possible cosmological understanding, a symbolic mapping of earth and sky. Certain wells and platforms may have been placed to mark solstices or seasonal changes, tying the heavens into the fabric of daily life. This convergence of water, fire, earth, and sky, all within urban planning, speaks to a worldview that saw the material and spiritual not as opposites, but as reflections of one another. Finally, we turn once more to silence the silence of lost voices, unwritten prayers, and unreadable scripts. Perhaps this is the most spiritual element of the Indus legacy. Not the dogmas they left behind, but the mystery they preserved. In a world so rich with organization, beauty, and symmetry, the Indus people gave no monuments to ego, no kings to remember, no wars to glorify. What they gave instead were clues soft as the curve of a ceramic bowl, fleeting as the impression of a seal pressed into clay. Their religion, if we may call it that, may have been a spiritual ecology, a reverence for patterns, for water, for fertility, for fire, for stillness, a sacredness in symmetry, a holiness in hygiene, a devotion whispered rather than shouted. As we bring this chapter to a close, let us imagine once more the great bath still filled with water from the well, cool and silent beneath the rising moon. A figure enters slowly, lowering themselves into the pool, not to cleanse the body, but the soul. In the soft ripples, the stars reflect the heavens and the earth meeting in quiet ceremony. Close your eyes now. Let the soft echo of ancient waters lull you toward sleep. The script may be unreadable, but the feeling remains deep, sacred, and still. As the centuries pass, something begins to shift in the cities of the Indus. Streets once swept daily now gather dust. Wells run a little lower. The baked brick walls crack, and the soft hum of industry of potters, bead makers, and traders fades to silence. This is not the sound of collapse in a single moment. It is a quiet unwinding, a slow, deliberate transition that historians call urban decline. From around 1900 BCE, signs begin to emerge. Major cities such as Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa shrink in size and importance. Public buildings fall into disrepair. The quality of bricks diminishes. Kiln-fired bricks are replaced by sun-dried mud bricks, which are less durable. The once standardized weights and measures disappear. Streets become narrower, drains are clogged, and large organized warehouses are abandoned. What caused this soft disintegration? There is no single answer, no invasion, no catastrophe written in blood. Rather, it appears that multiple factors, environmental, economic, and possibly social, intertwined to bring about the end of this remarkable urban culture. Let us begin with the environment. the Indus Valley Civilization flourished in a delicate ecological balance. Its cities depended on rivers not just for water, but for trade, agriculture, and communication. But rivers, like civilizations, change course. Paleoclimatic and geological evidence suggests that the Ghaggar-Hakra River, possibly the ancient Saraswati, dried up during this period. Once a fertile lifeline for many settlements, it became seasonal, unreliable, and eventually vanished altogether. This shift may have been caused by tectonic activity, which diverted the rivers away from their original courses. Elsewhere, the mighty Indus River itself may have become more unpredictable, flooding some areas, drying others. Monsoons weakened over centuries, leading to droughts and water stress. Without stable water supplies, cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Dholavira, carefully planned around wells, baths, and reservoirs, became difficult to sustain. Archaeological layers show increasing signs of abandonment, buildings left unfinished, pottery scattered, urban planning neglected. At Mohenjo-Daro, the uppermost layers reveal hasty construction, with bricks reused from older structures. The sense of order that once defined the Indus cities begins to fragment. Yet environmental change alone does not tell the full story. Trade, too, seems to falter. The long-distance connections that once linked the Indus to Mesopotamia, Oman, and Central Asia grow faint. Cuneiform records from Mesopotamia refer to trade with Meluhha, likely the Indus region, as early as 2300 BCE. These records mention Meluhan merchants arriving in Sumerian cities, bringing goods such as ivory, lapis lazuli, carnelian, and exotic woods. But after 1900 BCE, references to Meluhha cease. Perhaps as rivers dried and agriculture declined, surpluses dwindled. Without goods to export, the trade routes fell silent. Ports, like Lothal, lost their purpose. The once thriving dockyards silted up, and the bustling exchanges gave way to quiet. Internally, the social and economic fabric of the civilization may have begun to fray. The standardization of bricks, weights, symbols was one of the great strengths of the Indus world. It suggested a shared system of control or governance. But over time, that uniformity disappears. Different regions begin to use local styles. Pottery becomes less refined. Writing, once consistent across the entire civilization, is used less and less, and eventually vanishes altogether. This decentralization may reflect a loss of central coordination, perhaps due to changing leadership, internal unrest, or simply the practical challenges of maintaining control across such vast terrain during a period of environmental strain. And so, the great cities fade. But here is something extraordinary. The decline of the Indus Valley Civilization is marked by an absence of destruction. There are no mass graves, no signs of warfare, no burned layers indicating widespread conquest or violence. The cities were not destroyed, they were abandoned. Some archaeologists once speculated about an invasion linking the decline of the Indus to the arrival of Indo-Aryan peoples from the northwest. This idea was based in part on ancient texts like the Rig Veda, which spoke of the destruction of cities. But modern scholarship has largely moved away from this theory. Genetic studies and archaeological evidence do not support a large-scale invasion at this time. Instead, the picture is one of gradual migration, adaptation, and dispersal. As the great cities declined, populations appear to have moved eastward toward the Ganges plain, where new agricultural lands beckoned. Villages grew up where once there had been cities. The urban became rural. The monumental became modest, and yet they did not vanish. The people of the Indus Valley Civilization did not disappear. Their descendants lived on, adapting to new climates, new river systems, and new social structures. Some of their traditions likely continued woven into local practices, echoed in the architecture of later settlements, preserved in the memories passed from one generation to the next. In places like Rakhigarhi, Banawali, and Farmana, archaeologists have found transitional sites blending elements of the mature Indus culture with emerging new traditions. The pottery changes, the burial customs shift, and the urban planning grows simpler. Yet the thread of continuity is there. Over time, these threads may have contributed to the rise of the Vedic culture, which flourished along the Ganges. While distinct in many ways, this culture may have absorbed and transformed aspects of the earlier Indus world, from religious ideas to craft techniques. It is important to remember that civilizations do not die like people. They evolve, transform, and disperse. What we call a collapse is often a change in form, not a vanishing. The Indus Valley Civilization, in this sense, did not end. It flowed onward, like the rivers it once embraced, dividing into streams, soaking into the soil, rising again in new places. As we close this chapter, let us return once more to Mohenjo-Daro. The streets are quiet now. The granaries are empty. The great bath, dry. But the bricks remain. The wells remain. The layout of the city, its balance, its symmetry still speaks of a people who cared deeply for order, beauty, and harmony. Even in decline, there is grace. The story of the Indus is not one of fire and fury, but of change, subtle, enduring, and quiet. Let that quiet wash over you now. Let your breath deepen. Let the stillness of those ancient streets become your own stillness. The story continues in whispers, in fragments, in dreams. Sleep now, in the silence of the past. The cities of the Indus Valley lay buried beneath layers of silt and time for more than 3,000 years, forgotten by history, lost to memory. There were no legends of Harappa, no surviving records of Mohenjo-Daro. Unlike the pyramids of Egypt or the ruins of Rome, the Indus cities left behind no monumental fame, no timeless epic to preserve their names, but they waited, patiently, beneath the dust, and then, in the mid-19th century, the earth stirred. It began with railway engineers. In the 1850s, British officials in colonial India were laying tracks for the Lahore-Karachi Railway when they discovered large, uniform bricks in the vicinity of Harappa. They were sturdy and plentiful, perfect, they thought, for railway ballast. Thousands of ancient bricks were hauled away and crushed beneath steel. Only later did archaeologists begin to ask, what had they destroyed? In the 1920s, two men, Daya Ram Sahni and R.D. Banerjee, began systematic excavations at Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. What they uncovered astonished the world. Here was a civilization older than Egypt, older than Mesopotamia, with cities of staggering sophistication. Here were drains, wells, streets, and seals, all from a world no one knew had existed. And yet, there were mysteries. So many mysteries. The script, though found on hundreds of seals and tablets, remains undeciphered to this day. The language it represents, if it is a full language, is unknown. No bilingual inscription has yet been found. Some scholars believe it is Proto-Dravidian, others propose different linguistic families, but certainty eludes us. The people of the Indus left behind no readable texts, no king lists, no myths. Their world speaks to us only through artifacts silent, elegant, and enigmatic. Archaeology has revealed thousands of sites since then, from Ganveriwala in the Cholistan Desert to Kalibangan in Rajasthan. Each site adds more detail to the picture, yet the picture remains incomplete. The mystery has become part of the allure. And yet, while much remains unknown, much has been learned. We now understand that the Indus Valley Civilization covered an area larger than any other Bronze Age civilization. We know it was urban, literate, and peaceful in character. We know its people were skilled in metallurgy, craftsmanship, water engineering, and urban planning. We know, too, that their society was complex, but perhaps not ruled by kings or warriors, as in Egypt or Mesopotamia. No royal tombs have been found, no grand statues of rulers. Power, if it existed, may have been collective or bureaucratic, not imposed by a single hand. And above all, we know that the Indus people were deeply attuned to balance between order and nature, between the individual and the city, between utility and beauty. Their legacy is not one of conquest or glory, but of quiet brilliance. Let us now take a moment to reflect on that legacy. In today's South Asia, traces of the Indus world persist in the cities, languages, arts, and rituals of the subcontinent. Many scholars believe that elements of modern Indian culture, from urban planning to craft traditions, may have roots that stretch back to the Harappans. The stepwells of Gujarat, the use of seals, the design of jewelry, even yoga-like postures found in ancient figurines, all may echo practices first cultivated along the Indus. Some see spiritual continuity as well. The Pashupati seal, with its horned figure seated in meditation surrounded by animals, bears resemblance to later depictions of Shiva. This is speculative, yet evocative, a tantalizing thread that links the past to the present. Culturally, the rediscovery of the Indus changed the way South Asia saw its own history. No longer was civilization something that arrived with foreign invaders or imperial powers. It had been born, nurtured, and matured in the very soil of the subcontinent long before the Ganges empires, long before the Mauryas or the Mughals. This has been a source of quiet pride and inspiration for archaeologists, historians, artists, and thinkers alike. And beyond India and Pakistan, the Indus story has become part of the broader human saga, a reminder that advanced civilizations need not be defined by kings, wars, or monuments. Here was a culture that may have valued harmony over hierarchy, function over spectacle, and community over conquest. What lessons does it leave us? Perhaps that strength can be found in cooperation, that urban life can be clean, organized, and sustainable. That water, the quiet lifeblood of civilization, is to be cherished and respected. That we must listen not just to noise and power, but to the quiet patterns of life that sustain us. As the modern world faces its own questions of climate, urbanization, identity, the Indus Valley offers not solutions, but perspective. Its people built without walls of war. They traded across oceans, tended their cities with care, and adapted even as rivers changed and fortunes waned. And though their names are lost, their hands shaped a world that echoes still. Now, as we drift to the end of our journey, let us close with a moment of stillness. Imagine the city of Mohenjo-Daro beneath the stars, the wide streets silent in moonlight, a breeze blowing across the great bath, a lamp flickering behind a carved lattice, the scent of fired clay and river wind. Somewhere, a potter dreams of new designs. A child walks barefoot through the alleyways. Abid quesito el rendeli escotzait regelre. Life moves gently, without hurry. That city, its people, its ideas, its calm is gone, yet not gone. It remains in the soil, in the echoes, in the slow-turning wheel of time, and now it remains in you. Sleep now, with the wisdom of the ancients at your side. Let the quiet conquest of the Indus be your companion. The story is not over. It only begins again in dreams. Good night.